Let's talk draft prospects. A lot of centers. Sorber, Maluach, Berenger. That's better. Why did I say Berenger? That doesn't matter. Michael Boranjolta. Wow. Early morning. Let's go.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I won't eat anything that has a shadow. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free, and we are available on all platforms, so give it a thumb and a double bang. We're here to talk to Tyler Rucker from No Ceilings. Their draft guide is out. I downloaded it today, and I'm about to start reading it after we do this show. I'm excited, so let's bring Tyler in. All right, so here he is, back on the show. Tyler Rucker, fresh off the release of the No Ceilings draft guide. Tyler, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Josh. Always exciting time of the year when I get to talk hoops with you. It's been too long.
I'm sure talking to me is not the exciting time of the year. It's the NBA draft that's a few weeks away. Tyler, you guys have been very busy with that NBA draft guide that released yesterday. I immediately downloaded it, and over 300 pages and close to 100,000 words, graphics all over it. It is actually amazing in terms of the content that is in there. So you're getting a lot of big name Twitter sphere shout outs on the draft guide as well yesterday, so that was great. So everyone can just tell everyone where they can go and find that before we start talking about these prospects.
Yeah, it's at noceilingsnba.com. We've got a little article, I guess, focus, and you can find it there. But our whole team went crazy. We did 100 players this year. Each player's got 3 pages. You know, we got pro comps, advanced numbers, synergy percentiles, everything you could ask for. So I appreciate the support from everyone. It's been awesome.
Go check it out. Go download it. It's only $15. You can go and get that and all the information on the draft prospects that you could want or need. But now we are here to talk about some individual stuff from you, Tyler, some opinions on 5 of these different draft prospects. We start off by talking about guys, with everyone that we have on, about guys that they're a little bit higher or lower on than the consensus. And this is a guy I've been waiting to talk about for a few weeks now. And we are going to talk about Khaman Maluach, the 7'2" center from Duke. And you're just maybe not quite there with him compared to maybe others. There are some that suggest he will be a top 6 pick. Probably unlikely out of the top 8. I'm guessing from how most people are seeing it. Like, where are you with him that makes you go, yeah, maybe not at that spot?
Yeah, it's funny because we always have these prospects that where you can get a little bit higher or lower on. Maluach is a really intriguing one because of the raw tools and the upside. He's got great size at around 7'2", 250, good length too. And, you know, with the NBA, I think we're always seeing there's the high desire for these rim running bigs that potentially could be shot blockers. I just think there's a lot more stuff that still needs to come around and be unlocked a little bit more than kind of taking a top 5, top 6 picks. Just seems really aggressive for me with a draft like this that has so much talent near the top. So it's not that I don't like Maluach. I'm still very intrigued. I just think, a top 5 pick for me would be a little bit rich with a player I think just needs a lot of patience and grooming and a team to be really patient with him. So I think the upside's tremendous. It's just a little bit rich for me to be picking that early.
What do you make of, he's South Sudanese, what do you make of the issue that some have brought up regarding visas and the fact that it is it's difficult for people in the US at the moment with South Sudanese passports and citizenship, that there are issues with visas? Is that something that you have heard from teams that might be a concern? Is it, say, for example, a team like Toronto where he's got to be crossing the border multiple times? Is there any discussion of issues with that?
It's something that you don't want to take lightly. Fortunately enough, when I've been asking around, there hasn't been any, situation or team that's brought up like, hey, this is something to look into. Now, I think with Toronto, that is a really interesting one. We've seen teams kind of also go out of their way to kind of go meet prospects to have workouts and stuff. So it's something these next couple of weeks will be really interesting to monitor. But definitely something that you're like, oh man, this is hopefully something that's not going to create any issues moving forward. But like I said, I think Maluach is such an intriguing talent. I think teams they're fine with having to go somewhere if it's, hey, let's meet halfway and try to, see what's going on. But something you want to kind of also keep in your mind and ask around, and hopefully you don't get any like, hey, this is the buzz now that's starting to create some questions.
Obviously, he's big. He's 7'2". He's young. He's not yet 19. He won't be 19 at the NBA draft. So we're talking about a guy that is incredibly young. Low usage player playing on that Duke team, obviously with a bunch of guys. We could have 3 Duke players go within the top 8 of this draft. So lots of talent there. The question for me is going to be like shooting. Like, okay, he hit 25% of threes. He took some. He didn't take a huge volume of them, because if that is an actual weapon that could be developed, and like 71% from the field, 77% from the free throw line, there's a few indicators there that go, okay, maybe we can do something there. But obviously he didn't need to be expanding his game or working on floaters or things like that with that Duke team. So is it possible? Like, is he a guy that, is he going to be a Jonas Valanciunas 1-3 attempt per game big man where look at that, he's spacing, or is he someone who legit might take 3 or 4 a game?
I think it leans a little bit more towards the Valanciunas type. And, I know a lot of fans and, scouts even get really intrigued with the shooting potential. He showed some of it back in the FIBA qualifiers. There's definitely some impressive tools that I think are trending the right way. But with Maluach, I don't think you're wanting him to be this consistent floor spacer. Like, he's a gigantic human with really good tools to be a force down there. I think you want him to be a rim protector, someone that cleans up the glass, and also a lob threat, and he can do that. I think, the situation at Duke this year was probably a little tough for him. We've seen it kind of struggle when other bigs have played there, like Derek Lively was kind of trying to get his feet wet and then all of a sudden had a good finish to the year. So I think Maluach is still a really fun upside swing with great tools to develop, but you just probably need to be a little bit more patient and keep it a little simple early on, keep the role kind of vanilla, and then let everything kind of fall into place, because you hear great things about his character and kind of the tools and intangibles he has. He just also needs to land with a good spot that'll let him develop and let those tools blossom.
So obviously when you look at his statistical profile, like, there are names that will automatically come to people's heads. So I always have the 2 names that come to my head with this sort of player: high field goal percentage, high blocks, rebounder, assists, nary to be seen, not really a shooter. And there are 2 names. There's the high end, Rudy Gobert, and there's the mid sort of area, which is Clint Capella. They're the names that you're a rim runner, you're a shot blocker, you're European. Like, these are the very 3, like, let's tick, 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 right? Where is that like an accurate archetype of the player that Maluach probably is going to be, outside of that shooting part that we just discussed? And, is the defensive ability more, I'm not saying it's Gobert because he's a 4-time defensive player of the year. Is it leaning Gobert, or is he more like, hey, you'll be a serviceable big man a la Clint Capella?
I like the Capella shout out just because I think that's a good realistic like area to start out when it comes to like the floor, because we've seen also like guys like this, or, it's not a down or a slander. Capella's played for a long time. He's been very effective. So I think starting that way with Maluach is great. And then there's just some tools to unlock to even offer more upside, more potential. So Gobert, it's always tough to kind of compare to because of how good he became as a defensive player, but he also like became that good. So Maluach, I think you hear all the boxes when it comes to like what type of kid he is, the character. So he could get to that, platform. It's just the offensive skills. And I think a little bit like defensively, there's some really good sequences. There's also some raw stuff when it comes to like him defending the perimeter and being quick. So you expect that with a player that of his development, how late he kind of is with his, curve, and there's just so much potential. That's why I see a team could be intrigued to take him really early in this draft. It's just one of those where like, hey, very early would be a bit risky for me, but I get the intrigue. Teams always fall in love with these guys when they have great size and upside. So I get why there's so much fascination.
We're going to come back and talk about 2 guys that honestly, they're probably the 2 players that I have been the most excited about to talk about, because they're just some interesting stuff with them. And I really want to get your opinion on these 2 guys. And I also want to talk to you about player comps and the way that maybe we move into folly with that sort of stuff. We'll come back to that in a second. Today's episode, though, it is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are here. The NBA finals are here. And every night of the finals, we're going to have big performances, highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. And there's never been a better time to get in on all of that with FanDuel, which makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. You can check out which players are showing up in the biggest moments. You can check the trends against certain opponents. All of that is over there on FanDuel. So if you've got that read on who is heating up, you can back it up with the same game parlay. And as a new customer, you can get $200 in bonus bets to add to that excitement if your first $5 bet hits. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Go to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, Tyler, what I wanted to talk about with player comps, we understand, everyone understands who's watching this show, and you understand, everyone understands that we're not saying that this is what this player is going to be, right? When we say that, we're talking about like either a statistical shape, a physical shape, whatever it is. But I want to move to a different part of that, just quickly on this, because do you ascribe to this theory that if a player is getting consistently comped to a one-of-one outlier freak, Draymond Green, right? Kawhi Leonard, put Rudy Gobert in that mix into Giannis, Kawhi, Shea, these guys would go, hey, like, we did not expect any of this stuff. None of the numbers would have suggested they do this. These are one of one. Hey, you're a 6'6" center who's also a point guard and one of the greatest defenders of all time. Seems reasonable to compare. Like when you see it and they go, oh, we don't mean Draymond, but when those sort of things get thrown around, do you go red flag on the prospect? Because that sort of archetype fails 99% of the time because it's just, the reason these guys are stars is because they broke all the molds. Do you look at it that way, or do you understand the validity in I could see the Draymond-ish comparison. I could see the Kawhi idea with this.
Yeah, I think you always got to take them with a little bit of a grain of salt. Comparing the guys to like Kevin Durant or Giannis, it's just like those guys don't come around often. So it's in a weird way when you get that type of like area, I try to be like, okay, now let's throw that out. Give me another one, because Giannis, we saw the physical transformation that he had as a young player to now. That doesn't happen often. And then Durant is just so skilled. You don't see guys like that all the time. I know every time we get a prospect that's a tall scorer, we're like, hey, Kevin Durant. It's like, no, there's a lot of stuff with Kevin Durant's game. Now, when it comes to someone like Draymond, I get the idea. So like sometimes I'll be like, okay, well, you're trying to project this forward that might be a little undersized, that has good defense and some playmaking ability. That makes some sense to me. I always just try to take player comps in general of like, okay, this is the idea that you're talking about. You're not talking about a 1-for-1, but you're talking about like this might be their skill set or their ability to impact the game at the next level. So when we get to the superstar comps, I'm always like, let's pump the brakes there. But when we try to get to these guys that you're saying this is how he could be an impact at the next level, that makes some sense to me.
Yeah, people always get hung up and like, oh my god, how can you take this guy at number 10? You're comparing him to Wendell Carter Jr. He's going to be a 10-year starting center in the NBA. Like, it's a pretty good player if you get to that. Like, not everyone is going to be a Hall of Famer or a multi-time All-Star. But that brings me to a guy who I hope is going to be a multi-time All-Star and a Hall of Fame player. He probably isn't. But I am incredibly intrigued by the statistical profile of we don't get many prospects from Georgetown coming through, but Thomas Sorber, who, I don't know, I've seen mocked in the lottery sometimes. I see it down in the 20s. Just quietly, if you're watching a video, the pink on the Georgetown jerseys is pretty goated. He's 19 years of age. He averaged 2.3 blocks and 1.7 steals per 36 minutes. He shot 72% from the line. He had similar three-point makes to Maluach at a worse percentage. I just like the fact that those defensive numbers, the rebounds, even the assists are all as high as they are for someone as young as he is. Pretty decent usage for a center as well. He's not super tall, 6'10 and a half. He measured in at. There's a lot there that I like with Sorber. When I look at some of the advanced statistical comparisons, it's a couple of Hawks young players who've played really well lately, Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu. Can you, obviously you are thinking he's underrated as well, so you're on my side of this. I think there is a chance. I'm not sure. I think there's a chance he could be the best center in this draft. Maybe, I don't know. I'm at that spot with him at this moment. I'm not sure on it though. I need you maybe you need to calm me down on this.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm going to put more energy in with you, Josh. No, I'm a big fan of Thomas Sorber. I like his game a lot. I think it's just one of those players, when I've watched him on tape, I think there's a lot of upside and a lot of intrigue, and checks a lot of boxes that, I think from watching tape, he does a lot of things on the court that really stood out to me more than just like what the numbers would suggest. He's really physical, measured in around 6'10", but he was around 255 pounds with a 7'6" wingspan. So he's got the length to make up for it. And, Sorber is really determined on the court. He throws his weight around. He seals guys off. He's kind of a bully is how I like to say it. So I think there's a lot of nastiness and a lot of good upside with him. And that's why I think he's a prospect that might shock some people and go a little bit earlier than maybe the public's expecting. He had an end of the season foot injury that kind of dampered, his stock for a little bit. But as long as the medicals check out and obviously the team interviews are going well, I think Sorber is going to be a name that could make some buzz in the next couple of weeks.
What's the downside then? Because again, I look at this stuff, the size is fine, the strength is fine, the usage is good, there's shooting upside. I think the defensive stuff looks good. I like the rebounding. I like all of it. Like what is the down? Is it like, okay, those numbers don't translate to being a good defender? He's going to get cooked out on switches. Is offensively he going to be someone like, the shooting's good, but it's John Collins, and we don't really trust what he's doing, and maybe doesn't impact the way that a team is able to win games the way that we would hope that those numbers would bring. Like what's the downside argument against Sorber?
I think with Sorber, you're seeing a lot of numbers that will be impressive when it talks about like splits and everything. But then you kind of go into the competition level, like, okay, was he just beaten up against teams that weren't as good? And you can make that argument, but then there's also some games where he had some really impressive showings against, better teams. So Sorber with that foot injury I'm talking about, I think people, anytime you get a big with size and you're talking about feet and injuries, you're like, okay, this could get scary. So he's had a little bit of a history with like getting the weight up a little bit. So you want to kind of keep him with good conditioning and keep that number respectable. And as long as everything checks out there, absolutely. The shot has some touch. It shows some intrigue. I think it still needs some work when it comes to just consistency, but I like too many of the tools at his size and his power when it comes to the footwork and the touch around the basket. And he's also just a nasty shot blocker. So I think there's a lot of good stuff. It's just one of those prospects like, hey, he hasn't been able to work out for teams, so it's going to come down to interviews, and does he get the green light when it comes to the medicals?
That's going to be the key thing, isn't it? The numbers are through the roof, and I do think that if he does fall outside the lottery, that there will be teams there that end up with a steal of a player. I'm really excited about what Sorber's going to bring, and I just obviously wish we didn't have that foot injury that was a problem at this point. But this next guy that we want to talk about is another one of these players that heading into this season, we talked Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, and honestly, I always put Nolan Traore in that mix as well. This guy's could be a top 5 player. I think he can shoot, he can pass, he's incredibly young, he's playing in this French league, and now you see him, maybe we'll go at pick number 20. His second half of the season is being much improved. He's shooting 40% from 3 from January onwards, I think. Obviously, the season-long numbers are not as good. He's averaging a ton of assists. He's got 30 usage playing for St. Quentin in the French league, 23 minutes a game over the course of when I pulled these numbers, whatever it was, a couple of days ago. Okay, let's start with Traore, because again, that was a pretty mainstream opinion that he was a top 5 player in this class, and he's not anymore. What happened?
Yeah, it's one of those classic, just a young player playing overseas that had a lot of hype coming into the year, and I think kind of just struggled. Dealt with some turnovers. The shooting consistency wasn't around, so kind of cooled off a bit, and you saw him in the public space cool and see towards like the lower first round. Now, it's one of the most fascinating prospects, I think, in this draft, because you ask around the league, you might get a completely different answer than what the public thinks. A lot of teams are still very high on him. They've liked him for a long time, going back to, before he had a great showing at the Nike Hoop Summit. And it's one of those things where he's got good size, he's young, knows how to play the game the right way with good feel. I know he had those turnovers I talked about, but I think he's looked much, much better the second half of the year. Just got caught up on his tape, and I'm like, okay, the light switch is starting to come on for him. So it's one of those names I think we could be shocked on night of the draft of like where Traore ends up, because I know teams are still very, very high on him, despite when he was struggling. Teams were having him pretty early on their boards. So he's one I want to kind of keep an eye on, because I think the second half of the year has really made teams feel a lot better, more comfortable.
It's this weird spot in the draft. We've got the probably consensus top 6 or 7, or however you want to phrase it. And then there's about 6 or 5 point guards in this range, with a bunch of teams that maybe don't want to draft a point guard. You've got Jeremiah Fears. We've got Traore. You've got, let me think off the top of my head. I don't need to off the top of my head. I can just look. You've got Yegor Demon. You've got Kasparis Yakuchonis. You could throw Jace Richardson into that mix as well. how do you view him versus those other points? Do you think that this goes Harper, Traore, then the others, or does he just sit with Fears, or does he below these guys? Because there is a bunch of 4 or 5 point guards, which often at times, Tyler, in drafts, teams might go, I might be able to get another pick later on, but there's 5, 6 guys I like here. Let me just push down and grab one of those guys later on.
Yeah, it's a really deep guard class, and that's why I do think there's going to be a lot of movement in that first round, because you get to a point, like you were saying, Josh, so you get a point in this draft, especially in the lottery, you get to a spot where a lot of these teams don't need guards. Yep. So they might even say, hey, we can move back because our board, we've got 5 or 6 guys that we really like. We're going to be comfortable with any of them, and a team behind us is really desperate to come up and get a guard that they can groom for the future. So I think when you get past Dylan Harper, it's kind of the dealer's choice of hey, what do you prefer here? Because each guard kind of offers something different. Traore's that upside swing with a good feel and high intangibles. I think you get to someone like Fears that's really young with a lot of upside with his game and good size and shiftiness. And then you got Yegor Demin and Yakachonis that are the plus size ball handlers with great playmaking ability. And if they can unlock the offensive game consistently, you really have something special. So there's a little bit of everything when it comes to hey, what are you looking for in a potential floor general? You might be able to find them in this class. And that's why I think it's going to be really interesting with where Traore ends up, because right now you might have him later if you're a fan that's evaluating and scouting, but teams might have that completely flipped. They might have him near the top of their boards.
We've got a couple more European guys to come back and talk about. And I'm excited to talk about this next guy again, because I feel like these guys that we're talking about with you here, Tyler, there's a bunch of these players that I'm like, oh, I really like this guy. Oh, a lot of stuff is popping with this player. So that brings me to this next guy, another French player. This one not playing in France, but playing in Slovenia, I think it was. He's playing in Slovenia. Is it KK Civita Olympia? Is that right? I think I got it right.
I think so, yeah.
Joan Beringer. The 6 foot, another 18 and 19-year-old, 6 foot, 10 or 11 big man. He's not even 19 yet. He only played 18 minutes a night, averaged 10 and 9 per 36, almost 3 blocks, 62% shooting. Very similar profile to guys like Maluach. The shot blocking, finishing, rebounding, big man. He is young. Berenger is a guy that I'm not really seeing mentioned a huge amount. He's in that morass of hey, he'll probably go in the 20s somewhere. But again, we can make those comparisons with those rim runners, those other sort of big men who fill those specific roles. Does Berenger have a larger upside than some of those guys? Is there more there? Is there any shooting? Or is this one of those guys where you go, no, if the free throws are bad, you didn't attempt any threes, is it just rim running? Is it just alley-oops? Is it just pick and rolls? What is he offensively?
I think he's been one of my favorite evaluations to kind of look at this year, because I think it's such a unique scenario of upside, and that there's a really good foundation right now. He's kind of a party crasher in my mind of hey, he could go much earlier than we're all ready for. And it's more because Berenger has been playing basketball, I think, for about 3 years. Grew up as a soccer player, and a fun story is he basically got to a point where he couldn't find cleats his size. So he was like, I got to try basketball. And you see how hard he plays on the court and how much he cares, and his defensive ability right now for how raw he is in terms of his basketball career is remarkable. So I think there's good size, there's good athleticism. He's great in the open floor. He's really quick and can get up the floor in a hurry, and he's a lob threat. So he checks a lot of boxes when you're looking for a rim runner, and then you're like, well, maybe there's some more untapped stuff that just is still coming to the surface. I think there's a little bit of touch, but it's one of those where it's the touch is good enough for where he should be right now. But if a team's convinced that there's a little bit more, absolutely. I had asked an exec, and they were like, hey, there's a lot of Jaron Allen vibes here. That's what we think he could be. So I think Berenger is one of those, maybe a team with 2 picks in this first round. They might be like, hey, if we could get him as a high upside pick on top of what we did earlier, maybe that's the route we go. So he's a fun one that I think teams and fans need to be excited about, because I think there's a lot of really good tools to work with.
So what do we make of the level of competition? He played in the ABA. He also started 14 of the 19 games in the Euro Cup, playing 18 minutes a night only, but obviously playing in Euro Cup, which is a higher level than ABA. That league has brought, the ABA itself has brought out many NBA players. What's the quality of that league sitting at the moment? Because we're getting a lot of players coming in from the German league at the moment. We're getting guys in the French league. Where is the ABA sitting there?
I think it's one of those things where you're just always keeping an eye on these, because basketball's all over the place now, and you see the importance and the growth of the game, especially developmental wise. Now he's also showcased he can hang his own against good competition, like you said, with the Euro Cup and everything. So when it comes to that league, especially when I'm evaluating someone like that with Berenger, where you're like, hey, maybe it comes down to that. You're also just trying to watch how he is on the court and where the processing is and how he's getting up and down the court. Defensively, for a player that I'm saying is so raw in his basketball career, for him to just be showcasing what he can do defensively, regardless of the competition, is just some advanced processing for a player that young. So I think it's a really a testament to like basketball all over the place of like how good these players are. And it's kind of great to see them go, he's from France, but like being able to go play with other teams and get consistent minutes and get some tape on. I think scouts are loving to see that.
What we're seeing, I think, in this draft, Tyler, is that with these European players, is that in the past, a lot of the European guys, okay, European coaches, they hate young players. They're going to play 10 minutes a night off the bench. How do we evaluate Mario Hezonja? Okay, that didn't work. How do we evaluate Kristaps Porzingis? That did work. Like, these guys barely played a lot of the time over in Europe. And we've seen a real sort of spectrum of these guys. The guys playing for like Saraf and Essengay, they're playing a lot of minutes. And the guys like Berenger playing like mediocre minutes. And then Traore is playing 25 minutes, which is pretty good numbers. And then we get to one of the traditional European powerhouses in terms of especially how they handle the minutes of young players. And we're going to go to Real Madrid and Hugo Gonzalez, who played 10 minutes a game. He's 19 years of age, and that does make it, playing. Everyone knows who Real Madrid is. We know the strength of that program, basketball and football-wise, and the history, and that's what made Luka Doncic so special, his ability to lead that team at 17 and 18 years of age. Gonzalez is just not really on the court much. The shooting numbers are uninspiring. He's young. He's 19. These other guys, Sorber, Traore, Maluach even, Berenger that we're talking about, I've liked all of them. I don't know about Hugo. I'm not really sure where I sit. I don't really, like, he's 6'6". Is he a wing? Is he a guard? Like, I don't know what he is. I don't know what his strength is. I'm sort of at a loss with him.
Kind of a mystery man right now. I think a lot of fans and people that are kind of taking the draft seriously, you're trying to figure out too what to do, and it's tough whenever we see a player like this that had such high pedigree coming into the year that I think it was viewed preseason as a guy that could be in the lottery. Then all of a sudden they just stick on a bench and they're like, okay, well, they're not playing a bunch. So what do we make of this? And it's tough because you look at that Real Madrid roster and there's just former NBA players all over the place. So it's like, well, the fact that he could even get any minutes is impressive. So, it's one of those when you ask around to scouts, they're still very high on Hugo because they've seen the foundation before this year. They know what type of player he is, performances he's had in some prestigious events. So it's another name that you asked around about. You kind of could get some teams that are still very, very intrigued with the potential. Athletic, kind of playmaking feel, high motor type of wing that I think also took good strides this year as like a spot up guy that you wanted to see the shot develop this year. And he kind of had to learn how to shoot it and play off the ball this year. So the tough part is he's not going to have that much time to come over and like work out for teams. So it's going to be really interesting. I think he's a complete wild card on the draft that teams might be like, hey, we feel good about, our scouting department and what we've seen, or you might see him slip a little bit. And then all of a sudden he might be an intriguing valued selection for someone picking later in the first round.
So you think there is a chance he's a first-round guy? I'm really sort of going back and forth on where I sit with him. And what you made me do then was talking about the NBA players on Real Madrid. I had to look at who was actually playing on that team. So we've got Facu Campazzo is there, Argentinian legend Gabriel Deck, Rudy Fernandez, Bruno Fernando, Usman Garuba, Jesus, Mario Hezonja, Serge Ibaka's still playing there? Wow. Sergio...
It's nuts. I'm telling you.
Sergio Yul, Shannon Musa, Xavier Ratin-Mays, Dennis Smith Jr., Eddie Tavares. Oh, wow. Okay. That is actually like... I know they're all NBA role players. To have like 12 NBA role players who have started plenty of games on a European team is crazy. And this is the team that Gershon Yabusele was on as well. Obviously, he didn't play there and he came across to Philadelphia. But yeah, that is a loaded a loaded team in Europe. You see names that you go, oh, I remember that guy got drafted in the second round. He never played. These are Serge Ibaka's playing there. Wow, I did not know that Serge Ibaka was playing on that team. Anyway, back to Hugo Gonzalez. So again, if we're looking for the positive, you take that out. Like, he got minutes in this team, and this team was a EuroLeague team, and he played those minutes. But historically, when he wasn't in this situation playing for Real Madrid, when he's playing with his peers, when he's playing junior competition, what was the strength that he brought? Is he playing point forward? Is he a knockdown shooter? Is he an aggressive driver? What was his thing that stood out in those age-related competitions? Which is, again, is when we're looking at college players, that's exactly what we're viewing those guys, what lens we're viewing those guys under.
Yeah, he was one of those crafty, you give him the ball, he could either make some plays off the bounce, kind of like an athletic slasher who also would kind of fly out of nowhere for tip dunks. Like he plays with a lot of passion, a lot of fire. And Hugo's one of those guys you were waiting for a little bit more of, like, the outside shot consistently come around. But when he was playing down with his peers, like, Hugo's one of the better players on the court. And it was like, there's a reason why he was at Real Madrid with that roster. So I think that's where it's going to come down to teams using their, scouting department of being like, hey, but before, when we watched Hugo, we absolutely loved what we saw. And maybe you're going also like, hey, they've gone to practices this year. They've seen what he can do. And obviously he's going to battle with those guys in practice every day. So it's going to be really interesting because I know he's a bit of a mystery, but I think teams still feel really good about his upside.
It is going to be intriguing to see how that all works out, and I'm glad that we're able to get through all of these prospects with you, Tyler, because there's just so many guys there that I really wanted to talk about, Traore and Sorber in particular, but Berenger, another key guy that I am really interested in, and Maluach, of course, who's going to be a top 10 player. So it was great to be able to chat with you about those guys. Last plug for the No Ceilings draft guide.
Yeah, it's a beast. So thanks for all the support. It's been fantastic from everybody. But yeah, we've got 100 prospects, 300 plus pages, illustrations, everything you could ask for. So that's at noceilingsnba.com. And thank you as always, Josh, for having me on.
No problem. The only criticism I'll have with it is the file is so big because of so much artwork and so much. It's like 130 megabytes. I'm trying to put it into certain spots so I can get profiles and put them up. So I've got them around my house, like I'm the Unabomber trying to read things, and it's just the file is huge. But it's because there's so much information there. Tyler, thank you again for the work that you do, and everyone over at No Ceilings. But thank you also for coming on and talking to me about NBA draft prospects.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
As per usual, with anyone from the No Ceilings collective, it is awesome to talk to those guys about the NBA draft. So we did it again with Tyler, and that is the majority of our draft prospect profiles done. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to be doing another draft prospect. We're going to do more mock drafts, and I am probably going to do a redraft of a prior draft. If you are over on Twitter, and I pray for your soul if you are on that site and having to read comments and posts on there, but if you are over there, I did put a poll out. And maybe I'll put it up on YouTube as well, saying which draft class would you like me to redraft? 24, 23, 22, or 21? Maybe we'll do all of them, but I'd like to know which one to start on. Tomorrow, we'll be doing the Atlanta Hawks season review shows, and then we'll see where that redraft comes, and then probably another mock draft coming next week. If there is a NBA draft prospect that you want a scouting report show on, let me know. I think I've covered, if I look at my top, let's have a look. My top 40, I think I've covered all of those players so far. There's a couple of guys that are hanging around that maybe I want to look at, like Yannick Conan, Niederhauser, Alex Tui, Drake Powell, Kobe Breyer, Vladislav Golden. They're probably Johnny Broom. They're probably the guys that I haven't done. Lachlan Ulbrich, Tyrese Proctor, maybe some of those Aussies. Rocco Zakarski, maybe we'll take a look at those guys. But if there's anyone specific that you want, let me know. Hit the thumb on the video, subscribe. Hawks tomorrow, redrafts, mock drafts, live draft show. It's all coming. Michael Bolton is done. He's asleep, and I'm done as well. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.